Don't say there is no water to solace the dryness at our hearts. In the story, the wanderer loses their way, distracted by the beauty of the desert, forgetting the danger and without enough experience to know how to make use of its hidden resources. They're desperate to find water and know they won't survive without it. When they find the well, they must make a leap of faith and choose whether to follow the directions left for them and conserve the bottled water to start the well, or to drink the bottle and risk dying of thirst anyway. To us, this may seem like an easy choice, but to the wanderer, whose thirst is great, this requires more than impulse control. It requires imagining a future beyond the bottle of water. It requires imagining a future where there is abundance when they have only had scarcity. The desert, while a place that provides the necessary sustenance for many flora and fauna, is also a place of potential death for the wanderer. Each of us have had desert experiences too, lost and scared and tired, looking for something as if our life depended upon it, and finding nothing at all. Until we found it, but didn't know if there was enough of it, enough to be made whole again. Enough to get us through. When the resources we need become scarce, whether they are basic needs like water or money, or spiritual needs like love and kindness, we often find it hard to trust that we will ever have what we need. We are stuck in between, in a liminal space where safety and comfort are long gone, and our destination is unknown, perhaps even unknowable. Liminal time is that time between the old and the new, when there are openings for something new to be born, but we haven't committed or discovered what that particular future will look like. We're also afraid, perhaps, to count on any particular future. When the wanderer finds the bottle of water, they aren't sure what to do, and they aren't sure they can trust their own eyes. The choices before them seem ambiguous, and the sudden appearance of the thing that is most needed feels disorienting. So much seems to be couched in a cautious maybe. The wanderer doesn't know, and neither do we, what will happen next. In times like these, we know that over-planning won't help. Or as a friend recently said to me, watch out for future tripping. It's easy to get sucked into the anxieties of what might be, rather than centering on the right here and now. What if we've each had our own version of 40 days in the desert? A long time of wandering, waiting, and fasting, and a time of unfulfilled longing, to be with family and friends, to feel healthy and whole, to be with community and to feel safe and cared for. What if these experiences have been preparation for us, for our shared ministries, as it was for Jesus? Like Jesus in the desert, we have had to face our own temptations. We have been compelled to experience our own vulnerabilities as we have experienced devastations, both personal and communal. Even time has been unreliable. Has it been 40 days or 40 years? It feels like both simultaneously. What does it mean to have faith in times like these? And how can we create and maintain community amid uncertain plans and agonizing experiences? Like those who've wandered in the desert before us, we too have been denied the supports that protected us from feeling our vulnerability, dependence, and need to surrender and deeper trust to something larger than our individual selves. We have in some ways been cracked open by conflict and grief and isolation, and we may find ourselves eager to find some way back to each other. We are looking for the well, hoping to quench our thirst, hoping to find a path that will lead us out of the liminal world. Some of us engage the spiritual practice of Lent at this time of year because it invites us to face the desert inside of us. It invites us to feel our smallness, to feel our vulnerability, to feel our fears, and to open ourselves to the chaos of the desert so that we can rediscover what we need and what needs us. Another spiritual practice, allowing ourselves to truly grieve and allowing ourselves the cleansing aspect of tears, which also connects us to the flow of the water of life and letting our tears reconnect us to the origins of life. Whether we're wandering in the desert or drowning in our sorrows, we have an opportunity to plumb the depths with new resolve and increased capacity. We share responsibility for the well, but its ability to quench our thirst, to save our lives even, this is a sacred gift that we receive, even as its source is unknown to us. In this place of liminality, we may find we want to go back to the way it was. Instead, we find ourselves marooned in a place that is in between, where we can't tell what's going to happen and we don't even know what's possible. And in this desert, as our thirst grows, as the number of days since we've been lost grows, the experience of disorientation and exhaustion and anxiety increases. And for each of us, these layers may be different. We have faced different losses and challenges. We've wandered in this desert with different resources. We can also see many shared layers too. In the desert of the pandemic, we've all struggled, not being in our buildings, at school and at work with each other, losing friends and family, having to grieve and care for one another with extra layers of difference. Organizational and social and political changes. With the right resources, we can manage the scarcity of the desert. We can sleep under the starlit sky and find abundance and possibility. But unprepared, we may face too much anxiety, and we may be tempted to drink the water we need to save for the well, destroying our future. Future tripping is a dangerous pastime, friends, like playing with fire in a drought or swimming out beyond the breaking waves in turbulent water. Wandering the desert without something to help us mark the path, we can easily be stuck circling the same spot over and over again and never even know it. And even when we finally see our way forward, when we find the well, we can be our own worst enemies. Denial and resistance can prevent us from developing the capacity to transform what is right in front of us, to take the water and start the well, just as we've been told to do. What have you resisted in this time of liminality? In our communities, some have resisted change and resisted following the carefully written instructions next to the bottle of water, giving in to impulse. Moving at the speed of trust has not come easily. We've been faced with using technology differently and with reorganizing everyday activities in ways that have been, at least at first, unfamiliar and uncomfortable. We've seen each other and ourselves vying for ways to regain normal, even in the face of evidence that the pandemic was far from over. We have yearned to return to the world before. But even when we have begun to arrive and to return, we are finding that some things aren't the same as they were when we left. We aren't the same. The wanderer will never think about the desert or water the same way again. Liminal time can be fraught with opportunity and danger. It can also be freeing. Our resistance and fear can cause us to rush into new opportunities or fall back into old patterns, to follow leaders who offer false promises or doubt our own abilities. But the desert can also offer us a freedom to be creative, just like we are this morning, to be open and flexible, allowing us to discover possibilities and ideas we would never have even tried before. Because the desert is not a barren landscape. There are ways to live in the desert even, but they aren't the same ways that we live in the rainforest or the mountains or the city. It requires some adaptation, some creativity, some innovation. For example, in Lima, Peru, one of the driest places on Earth, where water is incredibly difficult to come by, engineers devised a way to harness the humidity of their coast by creating a billboard that condenses the humidity into usable water. Wow. Adversity sometimes pushes us to be creative in new ways. What have you tried in this last 2 years, perhaps out of desperation, that you never would have tried in the before times? What did you discover about yourself, or what's actually possible that you might not have discovered otherwise? In my small southern UU church, we were faced with the struggle to get enough middle school and high school kids in one place at the same time. We had too few to create a thriving youth group, but I knew, our youth had been too long without each other, including my own 12-year-old. They were in school, but school was also still in the desert, caught in between worlds. So the well that we began to build was to be a place where they could rest and talk about their fears and create art and play games and dig in the dirt. But we needed help, so we turned to our neighbors and began to collaborate with other liberal faith communities in our little city to create a community youth group that was, mostly meeting outdoors like this. And the well that we built became a place to meet up. And so far, it has been made up of Methodists and liberal Baptists and Episcopalians and Unitarian Universalists. This group of youth and adults has made art, engaged in social service projects, started gardening, and begun to build new friendships. We don't know what's next, but we've begun to dream together. Once you start embracing new possibilities, you can start to feel a little brave, a little curious, a little creative. Maybe, what? What may be emerging from this liminality for you? During Lent, the practice of fasting or abstaining from material comforts is meant to nurture a sense of gratitude and to encourage us to share our resources with others. These last 2 years have been a long experience of moving between fasting and feasting, most of which we did not choose. Have we had the opportunity to retrieve something from the deep, beneath the ground, like the bucket that is lowered to the well? Something hidden and valuable, something life-giving and necessary that was obscured by our lives in the before. What treasures have you discovered that were already there, waiting for you to notice them? From where I've been watching, the well has offered us some new understandings of ourselves and our own purposes as Unitarian Universalists. At the individual level, so many of us are looking for work and looking at our personal lives and deciding to make changes. We don't want to stay in jobs where we are underpaid and undervalued. We don't want to give up time with our kids or our family and friends or our favorite pastimes and passion projects just to bring home a paycheck. We're moving to places we always wanted to live, leaving jobs that no longer are fulfilling, and reevaluating what we mean when we talk about the good life. And for me especially, the well has offered a chance to slow down, to pay attention to my own spiritual thirst and the needs of my family. We have been wandering in the desert in need of nourishment and healing. Wandering together, we have reminded each other to rest under the stars and both save and savor what is precious and life-giving. As faith communities, we are also reevaluating, asking what it means to be a community. What work are we called to do together? What our history tells us about who we are and who we might be. Can we use our buildings differently? Can we maintain connections that are both online and in person? How can we reshape our roles to fit these new possibilities? What resources can we share, and who will we share them with? How will we offer each other the grace and space needed to grieve and heal and weave a new story? The desert wanderer does finally emerge into a new landscape, a more hospitable future. The moment the wanderer drinks their fill of the water, the world shifts from survival to possibility. We feel this internally too. We feel this internally too when we allow ourselves to dream again, to have our fill of things we need to be whole. This is like water on a dry throat. What's hard about Emergence is that it is truly an organic event. It begins when we stay awake under the stars and start to tell stories, when we discover the many wells of water that come from the cooler air, when we take the risk of using the water left to us to start the well instead of hastily drinking it, when we ensure that the next wanderer will also know how to start the well. Our faith communities can be places that allow and encourage this kind of growth. This well will never run dry, we are promised, if we can allow ourselves to make the leap of faith necessary to access its depths. What has new clarity and importance, perhaps essentiality, that we can use to start the well? How has our storyline changed? And what will we say about ourselves as we move through our time in the desert into the unfolding future? Rather than fearing what comes next or protecting ourselves from change by denying and resisting the moment, let's live into new possibilities. Don't say there is no water. We will find it, and we will drink it to our fill, and we will offer it to the next person whose thirst has brought them here. And together, we will emerge from the desert. Amen. Blessed be.